Hello students, Mr. Young here. Picking up where we left off yesterday, we need to first talk about the amendment process. Then we're going to hit up on the finer points of our three branches of government and then finish off with what it means to be a citizen. You may know a little about these subjects already, certainly the branches of government, and even a little bit on citizenship. We've talked about that before. What do you remember? So, the amendment process. The framers of the Constitution created something pretty great. The U.S. Constitution is the oldest Constitution that is still in use today, and among the shortest, yet it is a benchmark of civilization and a template for almost all following constitutions created since. Its simple language and solid key principles play a part in that, but what really makes it long-lasting is the ability for the Constitution to change and adapt with the changing times. The Constitution is an inbuilt system to be amended. The Constitution has been amended 27 times in its nearly 230 years of existence, which really isn't all that much considering how long of time that is. Basically, it's really hard to amend. This is so that factions of government cannot make changes all willy-nilly. You need pretty much a vast consensus to make any changes to the Constitution. This nice graphic here will show us both ways that amendments can be proposed and both ways it can be ratified. So it can be either proposed by a two-thirds vote of both houses of Congress, that's the Senate and the House, or it can be proposed by a two-thirds vote of national conventions called by Congress on request of two-thirds of the state legislatures. That's actually never been done before. Now for ratification, 26 of the 27 amendments were passed by three-quarters of the state legislatures approving it. Once to repeal prohibition, which was basically the outlaw of sales of alcohol, it was ratified by the passage of three-quarters of special state conventions. So that's only happened once. So most of the time, there's a two-thirds vote of the House and the Senate, and then it goes on to be ratified basically by the state legislatures. You need three-quarters of them. Let's hit up. That's the amendment process. Let's do our branches of federal government. We'll start with the legislature, aka Congress. So the Congress is made of two houses. The upper house is the Senate. There are 100 senators, 2 for each state. That's equal representation. We talked about that with the Connecticut Compromise, also called the Great Compromise. A senator has a 6-year term. 1/3 of senators run for election or re-election every 2 years. So there's 2-year cycles for senators. So 1/3 is elected in 2 years. The other 1/3 is re-elected the next 2 years, and so on and so forth. It's a cycle. Now the lower house is the House of Representatives, and the seats in this house are proportional to population. That means that the larger your state, the more representatives you get in the House. There are 435 voting representatives and 6 non-voting representatives, or delegates. The 6 non-voting members represent places like Guam and Puerto Rico, places that are like U.S. territories but not actually states. There will never be more than 435 delegates, even if there are more people. See, every 10 years we have a census, and then with that census data, we sort of shift around who those delegates belong to. So after a census, let's say Pennsylvania has more people living in it and New York shrank, one of their delegates might get switched to a Pennsylvania delegate. Not that like their delegate literally changes states, it's that when it goes up for re-election, now that spot will be a Pennsylvania spot instead of a New York spot. I hope that makes sense. Basically, there's never going to be more than 435 delegates. They're just shifted around from state to state, depending on whose population grew the most, or even shrank. Let's see. That pretty much ends that up. Fun fact, representatives serve 2-year terms and must be at least 25 years old. Senators have to be 30 years old. So we already said that it's the job of both houses to make laws for our nation. They have other jobs like controlling the budget, declaring war, ratifying treaties, things such as that. There are actually no term limits for the House of Representatives or the Senate. And this is a subject currently up for debate. There are some that think that there should be term limits on members of the House and the Senate. What do you think? Some think that it would be a good idea to cut down on career politicians and corruption. All right, moving on to the executive branch. It consists of the president, the vice president, his advisors, called the cabinet, and various departments and agencies, such as the Department of Homeland Security and the Environmental Protection Agency. One might call these agencies the bureaucracy because they run things, but they're not elected. They're all sort of appointed. The job of the executive branch is to administrate or carry out the law. Presidents hold office for 4 years and are limited to 2 terms. That means that you can only be the president, you can only be elected president for a total of 8 years. Some powers specific to the president are appointing ambassadors, negotiating treaties, and being the commander-in-chief of the military. Fun fact, you can technically be the president for more than 8 years. If, say, you are the vice president and the president dies, then you become the president for the rest of his term, and then you're still allowed to run for president twice. So in that way, you can be president for more than 8 years. I don't know who would want to do that, though. All right, moving on to the judicial branch. The judicial branch is the federal court system. The highest court of the land is called the Supreme Court. There are multiple other federal courts below the Supreme Court, such as the district courts and the courts of appeals, and even special courts, like those for bankruptcy. The Supreme Court is the highest court of the land, though. What they say is basically final. Very few of the thousands of cases sent to the Supreme Court are taken up by the 9 Supreme Court justices. It only accepts the most difficult cases. You'll notice that 9 is an odd number. That's so when the Supreme Court justices make a decision, there cannot be a tie. They are appointed by the president but must be approved by Congress, the Supreme Court justices, and they serve for life. So they pretty much serve until they die or retire. A major power of the Supreme Court would be what is called judicial review. This is basically the Supreme Court's power, one of their checks and balances, to determine whether or not an action of either the Congress or the executive branch, being the president, is constitutional, which is a way to say, is it legal in the United States. Currently, there are only 8 Supreme Court justices. One of them died in February. His name was Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, and he's not yet been replaced. President Obama tried to appoint a guy named Merrick Garland, but the Congress will not approve him. There are those in Congress that do not like him. Quickly on citizenship, this section is short. Basically, the rights of citizens. Your rights, you are citizens. I think you all are. Fall into 3 main categories: the rights to be protected from unfair government treatment, the right to be treated equally, and the right to enjoy your basic freedoms. The Fifth Amendment says that everyone has the right to due process. This basically means that the government has to have a clear process by which to take away your rights, which is fancy talk for basically prison. There has to be a clear system by which you are tried and then prosecuted. So everyone has to know that. You get to go through the whole process. No one can just say, you're going to jail, and then it happens. You have to go through the process. The 14th Amendment spells out your right for equal protection. Equal protection means you must be treated the same as everyone else, no matter what your race, religion, or affiliations, be they political or whatnot. The most recognized right is spelled out in the First Amendment, which guarantees the right to free speech, protest, and assembly. A free society must, after all, be able to share ideas. There are limits, though. It is often said that a person's rights end where another person's rights begin. For example, even though you have a right to protest, you cannot riot and loot or block traffic. This would be infringing on other people's rights to things like safety and property. A quick note on citizenship in the literal sense: if you were born on U.S. soil, you are automatically a citizen. And this includes military bases abroad, like out in the world. If you are not born on U.S. soil, you can become a citizen through a process called naturalization. This process involves, a legal process, including paperwork, application, and even a citizenship test. And then here we have a a picture of some folks that are about to become citizens. They've become naturalized. To become a citizen, you must swear allegiance to the United States. So that's it for today. That's actually the end of Chapter 8 in terms of lessons. So stay tuned for tomorrow. I think we're going to do a project instead of a test. So keep an eye out for that. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, you can go ahead and just take the quiz on the next page, and we'll see what tomorrow brings us. Have a good one.